Recording.
Okay.
Everybody, welcome back to another VH2 Presents musical song draft. This time we're doing Metallica. Exactly. Same thing with Ozzy. We are going to select a team of 15 Metallica songs, and today we were going to be doing the top 5 for each of us. So we are going to be selecting our starting 5 Metallica songs, and this will be I think we'll see how this draft goes, but I can see this being a bit more of the Evan show, because while I enjoy Metallica enough to select some songs here, Evan is the Metallica expert and historian who can tell you about all of the songs and the everything behind them. So if Evan, I'm just setting the expectations very high for your contributions in this particular podcast. So don't let me down and don't let everybody else down.
Well, and if I let you down, I'm letting the whole team down too.
Yeah.
Just I was taught as a kid, basically, if there's like one important life lesson I could instill to people, especially during these very challenging times, it's don't fuck up. Just whatever you do. There's just no excuse. Anyway, to your point, Mike, I should say that we are going to be limiting this to a crisp, tidy 50 minutes. So that's a boundary for me so that I don't go off the deep end talking about Metallica. As you sort of alluded to, Metallica has been my favorite band for about over 20 years. I have been and still am obsessed with them. I could tell you lots of stories, but rather than do that, why don't we let our song choices sort of guide the discussion here? And it's a draft, so we're going to pick our starting 5s, our go-to guys. These are the Giannis Antetokounmpos, your Kobe Bryants, your Michael Jordans. These are the big heavy hitters. Mike, flip that coin.
Okay, so we have a coin here. This is a $50, 50-cent coin.
Wow.
And I'll go ahead and flip it. Evan, you call it.
All righty, tails. Calling tails.
You called tails.
Yep.
And we're gonna find this out for the first time. Oh, what's this I see?
You cheated. That's a 2-headed coin.
Okay.
And
So what this means is that unlike last time in the Aussie draft where Evan got to select first, I get to select first. So this is good stuff. Before we get into the song selections, I want to just set one rule, and which may not actually come into play, may not be relevant, but it's worth discussing nonetheless, is that our cover songs off of our cover songs allowed, and are any like live recordings like their '89 Seattle performance or S&M, are any of those eligible?
My vote for Metallica, and I know this is not what we did for Ozzy, but I think you can make a case that it's permissible here, is to allow covers, but not to allow live versions. For Ozzy, it got kind of confusing just because, like, how do you handle the whole Black Sabbath thing? Do those count as covers? Are they Ozzy songs? And I think it was correct to say, no, those are Black Sabbath songs, and just because Ozzy re-recorded them as Ozzy live, they don't count. However, I would say, like, for Metallica, if, Mike, I'm sure, like, Whiskey in the Jar is probably something in your top 2 or 3. I think I would allow you to have that. I do think there are some Metallica cover songs that they, like, really did make their own and did bring people into Metallica. So I vote that. I think we should keep them. If you want to take it away, you're in charge.
Yeah.
That will affect my picks.
Well, I say we keep them in because I think that, Ozzy had a cover album, and that was, I think, like, I don't know, I think it was, I want to say, like 2005 thereabouts. I feel like that's like a very perfunctory, cover album, which I think, like, all iconic bands, I know, like Weezer had a cover album that they did a couple years ago where that just seems like end of the career, easy way to sell albums. I think that, like, Garage incorporated some of the songs, like you said, like Whiskey in the Jar, Turn the Page are songs that Metallica made their own and are pretty iconic. So I would say that those are allowed. But I think that live stuff is not.
Okay, so we're in agreement as usual.
Okay, that's
Mike
good.
and I are going to be.
Okay.
This is gonna be a love fest, folks. Unless you swipe my first pick. So let's see what you have.
Well, we will find out. I'm going to start off with one quick prediction, and that is that these albums are going to be weighted heavily towards the first four albums Metallica had, specifically the Cliff Burton trio.
Yeah.
But we will find out. Okay, so first overall pick that I'm going to take off, I'm going to take the title track off of Master of Puppets.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, a fairly easy selection because that's just such a great song, and there's a lot going on in it.
Yeah. Okay. So in a way, Mike, that was also my first pick. But in a way, I'm grateful that you took it because that's not how you spell puppets.
Yeah.
In a way, I'm grateful that you took it because I think, we just looked at this funny thing. If you Google like Metallica top songs, there's a Spin magazine article that ranks all 151 recordings, and they put this at the top. And I'm not surprised they did. I'm not surprised you did. I think it's probably unequivocally the best Metallica song, and it perfectly captures them in their prime, doing what they did to really bust open the genre. It is a super long, epic masterpiece of a song. I don't get sick of listening to it, even though it's the one you hear most often when you're, I guess probably after Enter Sandman or Nothing Else Matters, you probably hear Master Puppets most often. It's the best track. I don't blame you for taking it. I'm a little bit grateful, though, because it allows me to put my current favorite Metallica song as my first pick, which kind of back to that Ozzy debate. It's like you've got the indisputable masterpieces, and then you've got your own current bangers. And I'd say, like, if you took a poll, and Master Puppets is my all-time favorite, and but like over the last 5 years, the song that has really touched me the most has been the song Whiplash off of Kill 'Em All.
Okay.
So Whiplash is my favorite current track. It's just the one that gets me the most jacked up. I think it's got it's a perfect example of that, just like super aggressive thrash riff. And it's fun. It's just a bouncy, thrashy, fun song. I think it's a great sort of kind of key indicator of what that Kill 'Em All record was really trying to do. It's just like a great sample of that sound. That's another thing that's going to come up throughout this. Like Metallica is a sort of unique rock band in that they've been able to make so many great records that are also very different, unlike a band like AC/DC or even Ozzy, who produces a lot of records that are really, really they stick to their guns,
Yeah, they know their role. Yeah.
Metallica never knew their role, and especially throughout the 80s, each of these records I think of is very, very different. You can definitely tell right away what album you're listening to just by hearing the guitar sound. Later in their career, not knowing their role became a much bigger problem, which we'll talk about later. But anyway, I'm going to pick Whiplash, number 1, and we're off to the races.
Yeah, well, I'll say for Whiplash, that was one that was going to be very high up on my list. That would have been in my starting 5 if you did not select it.
It's so good.
Yeah, it is. It's I think the intro to that song is one that I've been really enjoying quite a bit. I want to say with just to talk real quick about Master of Puppets, there is a lot that I enjoy about the song. There's a lot that we could pick out. Like each movement of that song, we could probably dissect for it. But I just think that both James's guitar solo and Kirk's guitar solo, I just think are perfect. Obviously, James is more melodic, but I think this is Kirk Hammett at his best.
Well, we talked about that solo, that last guitar solo on Master of Puppets, which is really what carries the listener into complete orgiastic metal paradise. That was I mean, as a guitar dork, I can hear Joe Satriani's influence in that solo more than any other solo that Kirk's played. The like enormous whammy bar dips and pinch harmonics. That was just Joe, you know. And like if you read your Metallica lore, Kirk took some concentrated lessons from Joe. He took like 10 specific lessons to help him not suck, which has been a challenge throughout Kirk Hammett's life. For recording Master of Puppets, and he did end up producing what is one of the best heavy metal guitar solos of all time.
Yeah.
So very nice.
And I know that we're on an efficient timeline real quick. I want to say that earlier this week, Evan forwarded me a song by Joe Satriani, 1980. That's the name of the track. I enjoyed that track. I think it's a good song. I want to say I have come around a bit on Joe Satriani, where when I first heard him, I was like, wow, this guy is so cool. And then I was like, wow, this guy is kind of a dork. But now I'm like, he's just a guitar guy who does his own thing. And I've actually really come to appreciate the influence that he's had on the world of music. And it's so I come around on just really he's still I think definitely a guitar dork, but I really appreciate what he's done in the world of music a lot more than I did back when I was in high school, and declaring Surfing with the Alien the coolest song of all time.
The legend is, like the thrash movement and in the Bay Area in the early 1980s. Part of the idea behind that was to take a lot of the raw energy and aggression of punk music and translate it into something that was a little bit more technical and a little bit sharper musically, both with like really aggressive, like crisp, well-defined riffs, but then also leads. And from what I've been told, Joe Satriani was kind of the go-to guy for a lot of the up-and-coming thrash bands, because these bands were like super young. A lot of like very young, like high school age kids. And that was the sort of big thing. If you could get Joe Satriani to give you some lessons. And so I want to know more about that topic specifically, like Joe Satriani's influence on thrash, because obviously musically he has nothing, he does not fit into that genre whatsoever. But it would make sense that he, as a prominent guitar teacher, helped usher these young, wild stallions into something that was producible and recordable. Anyhow, lots to talk about there. I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
It's good.
But that's if you want to check it out, 1980. And I was listening to Surfing with the Alien earlier this week too, and that just still remains a very fun instrumental guitar rock album. So, okay, let's get into the next pick here. I'm going to go to And Justice for All, and I'm going to take One as my next pick. And
taking the big heavy hitters here right off.
Yeah, that one for me, I mean, again, all the way through, start to finish, it's a great song. But when I want to say it's the double bass drum kicks in, and then you get to the darkness imprisoning me, all that I see. Just the whole build up to that is just so textured and amazing, and it gets me, after all of these years, it still gets me very, very pumped up. There was a closer named Grant Balfour for the Oakland Athletics, and when he was like big, like 2012 to 2014, I think it was about the area, and that part of the song was his entrance song. So he was coming in for the ninth inning to win the game for the Oakland A's, and he'd come out and like strike out the side and everything, and it was just perfect and amazing. But yeah, One is I guess One is my two pick.
Mike picked One at number 2. Way to go, Mike.
Yeah.
Good picks for Mike. He's doing well. And I think it's great to have Mike helping out here, because he can talk to the connections between Metallica and sports, which are a fun little sidebar.
Yeah.
Been involved with professional sports in many, many ways.
Well, depending on which tracks you pick next, I mean, I have some other sports connections that I can certainly.
Oh, I look forward to it.
I'll tease number. Well, my next pick, for example, unless you snatch it, will be a sports connection too.
Okay, interesting. I don't think it's the one I'm thinking of, because my number 2 pick is the title track off of Ride the Lightning. Ride the Lightning. And this is like Metallica just kind of starting to get into that longer epic model of songwriting. It's also an interesting track because it's, I think of all the tracks on Ride the Lightning, it's the one where I can hear the most Dave Mustaine. And that's a whole other interesting saga that we can talk about. But, you know, if you listen to Kill 'Em All and some stuff on Ride the Lightning, particularly the title track, you know, you really do hear Dave's songwriting influence. And it seems in many respects, like if you look at the transition from early Metallica, like demos and stuff, you know, pre-Kill 'Em All and then Kill 'Em All to Ride the Lightning, you know, they sort of decided as a band after getting rid of Dave, or like maybe they didn't decide consciously, but they just kind of slowed things down, which is, I think, what enabled Metallica to go into this more sort of symphonic, you know, dynamic range. Whereas if you look at Dave Mustaine's early work with Megadeth, it seems to more pick up right where Metallica left off, with just like the emphasis on fast, you know, winding riffs, and that sort of main riff on Ride the Lightning. You just know he wrote. I've heard him take credit for it many times in interviews, and I believe him. Just really exciting rhythm guitar work and a nice long epic guitar solo. Many Dimensions, one of my favorite songs. I tend to like the thrashier Metallica, even though, you know, I'm with you. Like songs like Master Puppets and One, they're just like magnum opuses. Is opie a word?
Yeah, it's absolutely it is. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
On the subject of Dave Mustaine, I mean, I think we could do a Megadeth draft one of these days too.
For sure.
I'll say with I just want to touch real quick on him is one thing that I've been doing a bit more during quarantine is watching, just, you know, going down some YouTube rabbit holes and watching some stuff. And I've been watching some videos of some live Megadeth performances. And I'm just like continually reminded of how good a guitar player Dave Mustaine is.
Yeah.
I'm just like how just good he sounds, and just like what he's able to do.
Yeah, for sure. And just, you know, just like, I think I would call Dave Mustaine a musical genius. I would also call James Hetfield a musical genius, just because like they were doing things that were really innovative. You know, like that like, again, that whole thrash movement is kind of like an isolated little, you know, thing that developed and had so many like offspring. But I feel like those guys were just so critical to like that style of really rhythm guitar playing, more than anything else. And again, I see it as like a logical progression from punk. You know, if you like that really rhythmic punk, bouncy energy, this is like adding some just sort of like sinister shrapnel to that sound, making it more metallic. And Dave Mustaine, more than anyone else, is kind of like, I see as just sort of like the godfather of all of that. He just writes incredible riffs, you know. I mean, and same for Hetfield. That's what's so incredible about it. Like the opening riff for Master of Puppets is just insanely good. It's like there's nothing like it, you know. It's perfect. That came out of like a 23-year-old's brain boggles my mind. But anyway.
Yeah, no, that is all well said. And these are, I think, you know, one of the future podcasts that we'll have on this in the draft, or maybe we can have like a debrief once our teams are selected, and we can just talk about all of these topics that are within the orbit of Metallica and their songs, like, you know, Dave Mustaine and Joe Satriani. And if we even want to get into it, we can talk about, you know, like Les Claypool and his audition for Metallica.
I think you would have been a good Metallica bass player.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I had a certain pick in mind for my third selection. I had a pick in mind, but I'm actually changing it. I'm going to stay on Kill 'Em All. I'm going to make my first pick off of Kill 'Em All, and I'm going to select Jump in the Fire for my third pick. And just to do a comparison, so for the Aussie draft, one of my top picks, I believe my second overall pick was Bark at the Moon. and what I remarked about Bark at the Moon is how just like how quickly and emphatically that song begins. Same thing with Jump in the Fire, where I just think that opening riff is just so powerful and intense from the get go, and it just doesn't let up. And then it just doesn't let up. And then the very end of the song too is it has just continues to ratchet up the intensity. And I think it's just a very good thrash track, good riff, good solo, just all around.
Yeah.
One of my favorite tracks off of that album. Probably say my second favorite track behind Whiplash. But
yeah, I mean, obviously, Mike, the audience doesn't know. Well, actually, the audience does know, because the audience is my brother, who also played on this recording. But there was a time when I found this song so inspiring that I felt compelled to record with my band, our band, Forest Fire, an instrumental version of Jump in the Fire,
yeah.
which was literally nothing but a photocopy of Jump in the Fire with no lyrics. I think as 16-year-old, 14-year-olds, we didn't really understand at the time that, like, if you're going to make an instrumental version of a song, you need to kind of do something to make it a little beefier and more interesting.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, we'll just play it with no lyrics. And so I love this song, and it's another one where I hear a lot of Dave Mustaine. I can imagine Metallica playing this with him in the lineup, like at double speed, like it seems like it's not
Yeah.
something that probably got slowed down after he left the band. But it's an awesome song. 2 really good guitar solos. It's exciting. Most of the tracks on Kill 'Em All, I mean, like, it's like drinking a shot of espresso. You can't listen to that song without getting a little jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
And Whiplash, when I started getting really into running, of course I got out of it now, I'm fat. But before that, Whiplash, when that song would come on my, whatever iPod Shuffle, man, I'll tell you, I would shit my pants and then I would run faster.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. That's where we can, there is something about when you're going for a run, especially like if you're, just kind of sagging on energy a little bit in a song, like Whiplash comes in and gives you a little jolt of energy that you need.
If I had to say, it's like if I had to make some sort of general broad brush descriptions of like Metallica's transition musically, I'd say like Kill 'Em All. I mean, they'd already been really busy before that came out. I mean, I think that was like really the first mass-produced thrash record. There was like 2 years of thrash music going on before Kill 'Em All. And so that Kill 'Em All was like trying to like distill that and like get like an essential thrash record out there. And it's perfect at that. And then, the next year when they released Ride the Lightning, you can tell they were clearly trying to expand and be more melodic, more dynamic, appeal to like wider metal audiences, right? They are much more of a romantic aesthetic in Ride the Lightning, with an emphasis on songs that were darker, kind of creepier. And then Master of Puppets sort of took that and leveled it up even further. Master of Puppets, though, is, I think, what makes it the iconic Metallica record is that there's a degree of like sinisterness on it. It is the first time where Metallica like gets really angry. Mm-hmm. And that anger, that continued into Injustice for All, which I think is Metallica's angriest record. But Master of Puppets has some tracks on it that are just nasty. They're sinister, and that's probably my favorite Metallica when they're doing that.
Yeah.
And so my third pick, I think, is a sort of silver platter example of that, and that is the song "Battery" off of Master of Puppets. It's got this sort of like teasing, acoustic guitar intro, and then it just launches into this really abrasive. I mean, when I was a young kid getting into Metallica, I couldn't listen to Battery. I thought it was almost like too abrasive for me. And it became one of my very favorite songs. And again, this is like Hetfield, like writing these really nasty, but also incredibly precise metal riffs. I just think Battery's an epic. Uh, I've heard them play it live a few times, and it's just sort of like, it's rapture. It's the rapture. So Battery's my number three.
Well, I'll say the first exposure that I had to the Master of Puppets album, I think would have been 2001, driving to blues camp in Elkins, West Virginia, and putting on Master of Puppets and listening to it. And I remember I would have been 15 at the time. I remember like being like physically exhausted
Yeah.
after listening to Battery. I mean, obviously the road trip factors into that at all, but I just remember like that song, like what you were saying about like being like too much for you, is just like there's like so much concentrated,
Yeah.
aggression in the song, and
Yeah.
it's just like so like it's just like so precisely done too that
Yeah.
you can feel it.
And that's the title of the song. Like they're trying to punch you in the face, and it's just like, and the
Yeah.
fact that like, I mean, if you listen to Master of Puppets, and I still do, like this is any of the first four Metallica records. I have a relationship with every single one of the songs on all four of those records, and I will any day like listen to the whole thing front to back. But like Master of Puppets as an album, just like that, it's just like like as a single piece of music, like that first side of Master of Puppets to like go from Battery into Master of Puppets, you're just like hooked. You're hooked on this
Well,
journey, and yeah.
well, I'll have you know that your description of the Master of Puppets album has influenced my decision making on what I'm going to take next. Specifically, you talked about how like dark and dark and aggressive the album is, and I think for me, one of my favorite tracks, but what I would say is in my opinion, the darkest track, which like gets to the most like desperate desperate and horrible place, is Welcome Home Sanitarium, which is going to be my next selection here.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, because I mean that one, it's something you listen to it and it's just a claustrophobic song.
Which
I
was
again love the intro, which I believe with the harmonics, and then the just the build up to the guitar solo. And again, when I first heard the song, the guitar solo has a lot of notes in it, which I like. But it also just fits in so well with the rest of the track.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like it's a big momentous ending to the first side of the record. Um, Before you get into the deep cuts on Master of Puppets, which is a whole story in and of itself.
Yeah. And
And,
yeah, this is. I mean, it's tough. I mean, we'll have more time to discuss these because there are. I will say with Master of Puppeting, and this is not the last time we'll be talking about it, obviously, but there have been some times in my life, and I've like felt like the most like angry and upset, and just like I have all this like energy, and I don't know what to do with it. And it's like you put on Master of Puppets, and it just able to connect with it on that visceral level.
right. Yeah, it's a good pick. Got a couple good starting lineups going here. I'm gonna keep mine going. I'm going back into Kill 'Em All for this one. I'm actually gonna pick what is perhaps the most familiar track to most people off of that record. And even more so since a few years it showed up in one of the big X-Men movies, and that is The Four Horsemen by Metallica. One of the first songs I learned on guitar by Metallica. And again, it's like this is probably the only song, maybe Phantom Lord to an extent, but like Four Horsemen is probably the only track off Kill 'Em All that has that kind of multi-level, multi-layer epic feel to it. It's got a long bridge that slows down considerably. It's a very interesting development too, because this is a song they'd played live for quite a while before recording it on Kill 'Em All, and it was a Dave Mustaine song. I mean, he wrote most of this track except for that long bridge, And you can listen to, the first Megadeth record. He re-recorded it under its original title, which was Mechanics. And it is a twice as fast version of the Four Horsemen. And again, like it's cool to like look at that divergence. Like both really good songs. I mean, I love the Mechanics, but like if you listen to the Mechanics and then the Four Horsemen, it's clear that Metallica just had much broader ambitions than just being a thrash band. I think that's where this starts to come out. But another cool one, another personal guitar favorite for me. So I'm picking Four Horsemen.
Well, did you? So is it safe to say then you prefer Four Horsemen to Mechanics?
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
I mean it's a better song.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, like I mean that's the thing. Like Dave Mustaine's a musical genius, and he perhaps has a lot more integrity, although none of them really have much integrity later in their lives. I mean I love Dave Mustaine, but like his best work is not as good as James Hetfield's best work. It's just the ugly truth, I'm sorry to say. I mean, to an extent, you might be comparing apples and oranges, like they're going in different directions. But at some point, you got to just sort of look at the songs and say, like, well, the Mechanics is an example of like that is the essence of thrash. And, God bless Dave Mustaine for being the grand master of thrash. But Four Horsemen and like any of those first three records from Metallica, that's the essence of metal, and that's just a much bigger sort of prize or influence than what Dave Mustaine had. And as Dave Mustaine progressed, he made some. I think we can talk more about this when we do Megadeth, but Peace Sells and Rust in Peace are two of the best metal albums of all time that go beyond just simple like thrash. But I think it took Dave longer to get there, and yeah, that's my opinion. And there are many who are going to disagree. Who think like Megadeth is way better than Metallica, and that's fine.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I think there's no doubt that Four Horsemen as a song is more is grander in scope than Mechanics, and also
Grant.
just a much more polished track. Okay, so I will say I was a bit nervous when you were talking about taking the when you were talking about the your selection there. You were saying this is the most well-known track off of Kill 'Em All, because there was a track off of Kill 'Em All that I wanted to select, and I thought that you are going to be referencing, and I'm going to take it now because while supplies last, and that song is "Seek and Destroy."
Of course.
What I will be taking. I'm going to. This is also the track I was talking about. The professional sports tie-in is that the San Jose Sharks, the hockey team, when their intro song is "Seek and Destroy," which I think is appropriate for a lot of reasons, not the least of which Metallica being from the area. But again, that one just a great opening riff, great guitar solo. Overall good fun track.
This is a super important song to me. Definitely in my top. Actually, I had it in my top 10. I keep looking over at my whiteboard here because I've actually been like thinking about this all week. Like
Yeah.
my top 15. I had Seek and Destroy at number 8. So, but there have been times in my life where it could have been number 1. It was the first Metallica song that I became so obsessed with that I learned in its entirety. And I don't know, Mike, if you were there, but when we were 12 years old, I'd been playing guitar for about a year. I had just gotten my first really good guitar. It was a Jackson, American-made Jackson with EMG pickups, similar to what Metallica and Megadeth were playing, and I felt like I was the coolest kid on the block. And we had whatever our 7th grade show and tell bullshit that we did for whatever it was called. And I played Seek and Destroy, just the rhythm track, all the way through, all all 7 minutes and 40 seconds, or however long it is. Um, and it was a lot of fun. You know, and that song, yeah, it's always been one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
yeah,
I think it just goes to show me a bit of again, that's also one of the facets of Metallica, which I think is so great that it's a song that has like different separate movements to it. I mean, obviously you have the opening riff, which is opening part of the song, which is a bit slower, a bit more methodical, and then it just like kicks into another gear.
yeah.
The bridge, the guitar solo, and then of course, it goes back to the original riff. But that's that yeah, it just there are so many different layers and so many things to like about the song.
Some of my favorite Metallica lyrics too, in Seek and Destroy. You know, just that just sort of kind of aggressive hunting, stalking,
Yeah,
not pretty nondescript. I mean, like that's the big like the most of the lyrics on Kill 'Em All are not quite as deep as where they try to go on later records, maybe to an extent Ride the Lightning too. Like there's just more lyrics written about like stuff blowing up and killing people and getting killed, which I love. They pretty much stopped doing that by the time they got to like Master of Puppets, and they decided they wanted to be a bit more poetic and political. I've never been somebody who particularly, the lyrics aren't my first, it's not the main draw for me with most metal music. Um, but I remember really loving the lyrics of this song and the way that they went with the just like punky, angry riffs.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a quick comparison here, and if you want to totally disown me after I make this, feel free to do so. But we're talking about like opening lyrics,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna make there's a certain vibe that I get from the opening lyric here, Seek and Destroy. Like we are scanning the scene in the city tonight. There's an evil feeling in our brains, but it's nothing new. It drives us insane. The whole like scanning the scene in the city tonight. There's an evil feeling in our brains. It kind of is, I think, as a cousin to the opening lyric of "Shot in the Dark." Of
Out on the street. I'm
I'm
in
the night.
Yeah, I know. I won't.
And,
Why would I disown you for that? That's just the kind of thing that I rely on you for.
Well, no, I just think the reason is like with Seek and Destroy, it just like it fits the vibe of the song so much better, and I feel like the like Seek and Destroy, that punk thrash, just like early '80s Bay Area, that music scene, which obviously was before I was born, but like it seems like a more like important connection than like kind of like cheesy hair metal Ozzy Osbourne of like, but it's still anyway, there was a comparison or connection that I had to make there.
Oh, they were trying to incite violence with this record, with Kill 'Em All. It was absolutely about being aggressive and violent and having fun hitting people and getting hit.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great anthem for that kind of thing. Well, I guess we're doing pretty well here. We're getting to the 50-minute mark, so I guess unless you wanted to keep going with Seek and Destroy, I will make my fifth pick.
Okay.
Difficult choice here because this is a deeper cut. It's more of a personal favorite. Kind of gets back to the point I made about the sinister nature of some of the lyrics and music on Master of Puppets. But I'm picking the last track off of that album, which is Damage Incorporated. Mm-hmm. Some of my favorite James Hetfield riffs. It's sort of like is a perfect bookend to Battery for the record, and that it also, like Battery, it has an even like slower sort of intro that builds tons of tension before breaking into this just like completely devastating riff. Mm-hmm. And it is also one of the hardest songs to play. People don't realize like James Hetfield, a lot of the James Hetfield guitar work is really difficult to play. He had a technique that was all downward stroke, very fast. I can't pump my wrist as fast as he could, but he also just knew how to piece together sort of melodies for rhythm guitar that are complex. And this is like probably the most complex rhythm wise on the record. It's a very dark song. It is angry, and I think it just sort of uh, it to me is like the ultimate conclusion of that period of Metallica. You know, like it's like an epic kind of like stamp on that 1986 sound, and you know, one of my favorite tracks on the record, and one of my favorite overall songs, obviously, because I picked it. So, Damage Inc. for me in the top.
Well, that was also on my top 10.
Oh, really?
And yeah, that's again that's one of my favorite. Yeah, obviously one of my favorite tracks overall. One of the best tracks off the album. And
So good.
yeah, and it's yeah. I mean, it's really difficult just to overstate just like some of just the intensity on that album, which of course is then uh, which is also then just paired with just amazing songwriting and musicianship and instrumentation. Uh, so again, as long as I'm making comparisons, I'm gonna make a comparison to like Stanley Kubrick in movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, where I feel like Metallica is when you have a very ambitious vision, and then you also have the ability to like very like precisely and exactly turn that vision into musical work.
Mm-hmm,
So I
mm-hmm.
feel like that's what they did there, and I don't know. I just feel like there's like something like that's spiritual about that, of like listening to tracks like I feel like exactly as they were intended, and just like a perfect representation of what they wanted them to sound like and what they wanted them to be.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think probably more. I think Master of Puppets is the most sort of transcendent listening experience along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's just, and it's so deep. I don't get bored. I don't get bored with it.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain songs like, I mean, like, I'll be honest. Like, the thing that should not be is a cool song, but it's not my favorite piece. That's sort of like the where you have to be a bit more patient with the record, I think. Um, similar with Leper Messiah. Again, a good song, um, but musically not quite as deep as the others. But yeah, well, I think we're not done with Master of Puppets. I think there's probably more to say as we go through the draft.
Yeah.
So what are some big conclusions here? So we only have one track that's not off the first three.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah.
record is most represented here? It looks like Kill 'Em All so far is getting the most attention.
Well, is it tied between? Yeah, it's tied between Kill 'Em All and Master of Puppets.
Master of Puppets.
And then like Ride the Lightning is not
Not getting as much play as we thought, as I would have anticipated. The Spin magazine article had "For Whom the Bell Tolls" off "Ride the Lightning" as the #2 Metallica song as all time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like one of those ones. It's like it's so anthemic. Everybody knows it. Everybody can sing along. It's their big live, fun sing along song. But
yeah,
in my mind, probably it's my least favorite song off "Ride the Lightning."
Well, yeah, I mean, like, and like, For Whom the Bell Tolls, that's a song. I mean, again, iconic bass intro from Cliff Burton there, and it's a good one if you're at a football game and you want to get the crowd pumped up. You play the intro to For Whom the Bell Tolls to get everybody going. I know it's happened a lot at Camp Randall Stadium for Badgers games. It's a lot of fun. Early on, this would have been one of my top Metallica tracks. Again, early on, I'm talking about like in high school and college and whatnot, but it really, again, I think it's a very good song. It's very effective, but it feels like it belongs more in the Black Album Load era than it does in this one here.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, you can see putting "For Whom the Bell Tolls" on the Black Album. I was kind of like, again, the guitar player bias comes out. Like, I'd often skip that song just because it was so simple, and it doesn't really have a guitar solo. Unlike every other song on that record, on any of the first three records, has some sort of really prominent guitar solo. And for Whom the Bell Tolls, it's just some kind of like whammy bar noodling in the outro. There's not really a solo in it, which was unacceptable to me at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a fun song. Well, I feel like we've done some good work here.
Yeah, I know. I think there will be some lot more ride the lightning when we do the second part of the draft, when we go into the second stringers into the backups.
Do you think any music, any Metallica made in the '90s and beyond will show up on this draft?
I That's a good question. I think there might be a song or two that's on there. It's going to be hard to take. So the first four albums, I think it's hard to justify something not on any of them.
I almost feel like they should be separate drafts.
Yeah.
You know, I just can't compare stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. I like stuff. I like the Black album. I even like Load. But I can't put those things together. However, I will say with one exception, if you steal the song 2x4 from me, we're no longer.
Yeah. Well, that one. Well, darn. I guess we'll have. How are you doing on time here?
I think we should wrap it up.
Okay. I'll just say with Metallica for their more recent stuff. I'll just I'm probably not going to end up selecting this one. I'll just say a quick honorable mention while we're here is I think off of the album Death Magnetic, The Day That Never Comes, I think is probably my favorite Metallica track from the last 20 years.
Yeah,
I think that's a good one that has a good second half, good solo, good guitar work in there.
I'm
And
glad.
that's like
Yeah, sorry.
more reminiscent of it. I don't think anything off Saint Anger is going to be selected. Uh,
I gotta be honest. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Death Magnetic because I have nothing to say about any Metallica made after 2000 because I've never listened to it. I mean, I guess I was forced to listen to some Saint Anger because I saw them on that tour, but I don't know the tracks. I don't know anything off Death Magnetic. I put it in once and listened to it and didn't like it and never gave it another chance. So as perhaps like opinionated and somewhat knowledgeable as I am about the early records, I have nothing to say when it comes to those other stuff, those other ones. So, but yeah, more to come on that. Any closing thoughts before we shut it down and get ready for the next round?
No, I think that's basically it that I have. I like I said, I think that maybe I would say the over under on tracks that were after 1990 that were made. I'm gonna put the over under on that as 1.5. So I think if I'm gonna take a modern track, it'll probably, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. It'll probably be their cover of Stone Cold Crazy, which I've always really liked. So that one might be selected later on, and if I do select it, I can talk to it. So
I mean, I definitely know. Like there's some Black Album stuff that could creep its way up depending on how many of my top 15 that you swipe.
mm-hmm.
There's some just songs that are too juicy, man, too crunchy grooves. That's when they started to get all groovy, you know, like some of the tracks on Injustice for All and then leading into the Black Album, they were just, they were a groovier, bouncier kind of band. I mean, I think the emphasis there was on like the big arena tracks. Their songs got a little shorter when they went to the Black Album, and, you know, heavy Bob Rock influence, who obviously just kind of wanted them to sell as many records as possible. But anyway, we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, well, that's all that I have. Well, everybody, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to like this video and smash that subscribe button. And we'll see you next week with our backups, our next 5 picks.